Hello, Hingham 5th graders. My name is Janice McPhillips. I work at Holly Hill Farm in Cohasset. We are an organic vegetable, flower, and herb farm located in Cohasset, not too far away from Hingham. So if you haven't been on a field trip or summer camp or just for a visit with your family, please come sometime. Now I'm here at Plymouth River School and I'm in the garden and I'm all by myself, which is why I'm not wearing a mask. It's just me and my tripod, but I have a mask with me in case anybody comes by. But I'm here today to talk to you about something you're learning in your classroom, which is called compost. So here in Plymouth River, there are 4 compost bins, and every school has some compost bins. I know some of them are being used more than others. I know Foster School had some trouble with some critters bothering the compost, and nobody's making any compost this year because there's no lunch at school. But in the past here at Plymouth River, what would happen is students would take their apple cores or banana peels after lunch, and they would all go into a bucket, and they would come out here to the compost bin, and it would get deposited into one of these compost bins where it would get mixed with leaves or shredded newspaper or straw to give the compost, the microbes that are living in the compost pile, the proper nutrition to help them break that food waste down into humus. It's just one of many examples in nature of cycles of nutrients in nature. So the nutrition from that apple gets decomposed and put into a compost pile, and after the compost has decomposed, we can take that compost, put it back into the garden to grow more fruits and vegetables for us to eat. It's kind of just a very local form of recycling. Okay, we're going to take a quick peek inside one of these compost bins. Now, as I said, there's no lunch at school right now, so there's no bin in the cafeteria to collect bananas and apples and such. But if you look carefully, you can see one of the teachers at Plymouth River School made applesauce with her students, and she brought the apples out to the compost bin. These are some leaves. These are some pine needles. These have been sitting here for a long time, since last fall. And slowly but surely, they are decomposing and turning from leaves. And underneath of that, look at that. Does that look like leaves? Not so much. It's decomposed and it's turned into humus. Decomposed living plant material is called humus. Humus. Now, those apples probably shouldn't sit there like that because flies and bees and things like that might get at them. So I'm just going to stir that around a little bit and cover the apples so that the bees can't find them. Uh-oh, look what I found. You all know what that is, don't you? Whoops, I dropped it. That is a sticker from some kind of a fruit. So somebody probably had an apple or an orange that had that sticker, came from a farm, and they put the sticker on the farm, on the apple or the banana or the orange, and the orange or the apple or the banana has decomposed, but the sticker is left behind. And I bet you know the reason for that. Is it something that was alive like the apple was? An apple growing on a living tree or an orange growing on a living tree? No. No, this sticker is made from plastic, and that's why it has not decomposed. So does it belong here in the compost bin? No, it belongs in the trash. Now I'm in a wooded area next to the school, and as you can see, there are some very tall pine trees, also known as evergreen trees. There's a beautiful red tree that I think is a maple tree. That's a deciduous tree. It's the kind of tree that loses its leaves every year this time, and they fall on the ground. Here's an area where there's a lot of deciduous leaves mixed with some pine needles and a pine cone. Every year these leaves fall off, and no one comes back here to rake them up. But they don't pile up from year to year. You ever wondered why that is? Well, let's dig down and take a look. go. As you can see, this is what's underneath of the leaves and the pine cones. It smells really good. I hope you get a chance to come outside and do this yourself. It's just decomposed leaves and pine needles and pine cones. And another word for this is humus. It's the part of the soil that's underneath of here that's from living things. Everything in here used to be something alive. It used to be a pine cone, which was from a living tree, a pine needle, or a leaf from a deciduous tree. It falls on the ground, and the decomposers that live in the soil turn it from the leaf or the pine needle into humus. Leaves turn into humus, turn into more leaves for next year. Okay, time for backyard science here. On the right, there's a sample of decomposed compost from the compost bin. You can see there's some leaves, not fully decomposed. There's a little piece of a stem of a plant, also not fully decomposed. But it's compost from the compost bin. Used to be apples and banana peels and things like that. Now it's decomposed. There's a pumpkin seed. It didn't quite decompose all the way, but it's decomposed and it's humus or compost. We could add that to the garden if we wanted to grow more fruits and vegetables. Now on the left is a sample of some soil that I dug up from underneath of the grass next to the garden. You can see a little clump of grass there, and the very dry looking soil underneath of the grass is probably mostly a sandy, maybe some clay soil. On the right, remember, that's compost from the compost bin, and on the left, that's the soil underneath of the grass. So what we're going to do is take an equal volume of these two different kinds of soil. This is soil from underneath of the grass, and I'm going to put a half a cup into that coffee filter that's in a funnel sitting on top of a cup, and I'm going to do the same thing with this compost that's decomposed apples and bananas and things like that that have decomposed and turned into compost. I'm going to put a similar half cup into that coffee filter on the right, and I'm going to pour an equal volume of water through each of these. Now while I'm doing this, I want you to be thinking, will each of these samples absorb water in the same way? And what will happen to the water that's percolating through the sample? Do you think that each of these will absorb water in the same way? Well, we're going to find out. So you can see I'm pouring the water, same volume of water, half a cup, into each of these samples. Okay, the water has dripped through each of the samples, and now we're going to take what's in the coffee filter and spread it out in this tray. Now on the right there, remember, that's the sample that had the compost with the water poured through, and on the left, that's the sample from underneath of the grass, the soil that I dug up from under the grass. And wow, look how dry that looks. I hope you can see that. The coffee filter is wet, but really the bulk of what came out of the coffee filter is completely dry. Okay, here's a closer up look at our backyard science experiment. Again, this was the sample of compost that was in this coffee filter, and this is the sample of the soil that was from underneath of the grass and the coffee filter. And look at the difference in the amount of water that filtered or percolated through. The reason why we call this a perk test is because the water percolates through the sample, and you can see it's very different amounts of water came through these two samples. It's hard to see, but the one on the left, that was the water that went through the sandy soil that was underneath of the grass. Much more water came through because the soil under the grass didn't absorb as much water. This one's very dry. This one's very wet. Okay, fifth graders, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Just remember, the most important point is to remember that matter, whether it's something like an apple or something like these leaves, this can change over time. This apple can be food for me, and when I'm done eating it, the apple core or the skin, if I'm not eating the peel, or the skin can go into the compost bin. It will decompose, and this finished compost can get put into a garden bed and turn into more food. I can grow more food, recycling the nutrients from the apple as the apple changes. Same thing with these leaves. A tree will make leaves every spring. In the fall, the leaves fall on the ground and they decompose, And the trees that are in the forest will take in the nutrients from those leaves, from that humus that's in the forest floor, and turn it into more leaves so that the cycle can continue. And as we saw by doing a side-by-side comparison of water percolating through a sample of soil from underneath of the grass and compost from here in the compost pile, this compost has some pretty magical superpowers. It absorbs water way, way more than the soil that's in the grass that does not have a lot of humus in it. And that makes it really great for putting into a vegetable garden to grow plants. Pretty amazing, huh? Thanks for watching. Bye-bye now.